Sarah McClennen, and I am a certified Rolfer, advanced Rolfer, and I have been making gluten-free sourdough for over a year, and so I'm teaching the class to share that information.
Great.
So here we go. So we're taking, this is the loaf that I had rising all night, okay? And you can just come and feel, there's like a little springiness to it.
I like the idea of feeling it, yeah. Ooh, okay.
See? So you just, go ahead, it's okay. It's gonna get baked at 425, so this is what is called a proofing basket. There's two shapes. There's air that can get in, but you line it with a piece of one of these, and you dust it with flour so that it doesn't stick. So watch what happens. This is how I do it. I take it and I flip it out, and there we go. And then, because it's going in the oven, you'll see you got to cut off that. Now, the key to this bread so that it doesn't crack where you don't want it to, because you're going to see it's going to get bigger. You have to make a pretty pattern with this. They call it a lame, L-A-M-E. And it's to make pretty cuts so that it will, so I've settled in on just making some swirly lines like that. See how I did that?
Yeah.
All right, now, here comes the fun part. I've been preheating the oven at 425 for about 40 minutes, okay? And in the oven is the baking vessel, so that it is also preheated, okay? And you cook the bread inside. Now, watch what I did. I stayed over here because when you open this, hot air comes out. And if your hands are over there, you will be burnt. Okay, so I've done that several times. All right, so then it's on the parchment paper, so you can put it in the center, and then you do that, and then you pop it in. So 425, come look at the starter and look at how, and smell it and get close.
Oh, you can smell it.
So usually I feed it at 6 in the morning, so it's had a little
breakfast.
extra.
It's got breakfast.
It hasn't had its breakfast. So now when you stir it, you can see how bubbly it is. And I use something that is either glass or ceramic.
Yeah.
Don't use plastic.
No plastic.
No plastic for ferment, because it's going to live in here, and it needs a lid.
So why do you have two different?
Because I needed to make enough to give everybody some.
Oh, okay.
This is my normal
Okay.
one. This I added in because I've got to put some in jars
Okay.
for you all. But normally I just have one, this one. So we stir it up, and now before we feed it, we're gonna make the what's called the sponge for the next loaf. The other thing I learned the hard way is if you have your sourdough sitting on the counter, do not spray your cleaner on the counter around this, even if the lid's on. Because those antibacterial spray cleaner things, it will kill it. They're sensitive. Yeah.
Have you tried other flours, or you just always use the rice flour for the starter?
Just for, I only use the rice, but she mentions millet and sorghum and brown rice, and so you can experiment. This is where it becomes like what you want, right? So, so what I do is I put this on the scale and then turn it on for grams. And then we're gonna measure out 150 grams of the starter. And I'm gonna take some from each. All right, so we got that.
How many grams is that?
It says 150 grams.
Oh, I got it right here.
All right, so I use filtered water. 230. I do this every day, but okay. So, and then 80 of the flour. Thank you, Bethany.
Yes.
All right, and then 80 of the flour, which makes it 330. For exact. There's always a little wiggle room. All right, so then we turn this off and we mix this up. So then this is gonna sit.
It's almost like a pancake batter.
Yeah, pancake batter. That looks. I suppose if your starter is a little thicker, it might be thicker. But this works well for me. The bread comes out. So. All right, so now this is going to sit till tomorrow. I mean, actually, sorry, till tonight. It sits 12 hours. Or you could do it, 10 hours, whatever. So like today, it's 9 something. I'll probably make the loaf around 5. Talks about feeding your starter. So that's what we're doing here. So I've never actually really weighed it. I usually just throw in equal parts flour and water, but in the spirit of doing this correctly, we're going to add, she talks about 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. Oops, went a little over.
We can't
Like
see
I
that.
said, it's always a little bit of a, so you can see the thickness. Now you see this one is a little less thick. And it just varies, it depends on the heat in the house. Whoops, there goes my clean floor. All right, so now.
So normally,
Yeah, go ahead.
you would just have this. You just did that because you have us over.
Yeah.
And where do you keep that? The fridge, the counter?
Right on the counter.
Because you're using it every
I
day.
use it, I pretty much bake something at least every other day.
Okay. So if you weren't doing that, you would put it in the fridge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It from scratch. You can mix 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water in a dish and let it sit, and every day feed it a little bit, and within 3 days you'll have bubbles. Okay? So if for some reason your starter ever kicks the bucket, you can start over. Okay? But in the beginning, she said discarding it because initially you're getting the proper ratio of bacteria. So you want to get rid of some of it. And so in the beginning, of course, you're just throwing away, half or a third of a cup. But when you get a lot, I don't know, for me it's hard to throw it away. However, there's another thing she mentions, which is rather than throwing it away once you get to this stage where it's coasting, you can make things like the waffles or the cranberry bread, or there's a ton of other recipes online called sourdough discard recipes. You can make crackers, you can make, and she mentions that in the, on the page about your sourdough. But that's where I sort of go a little rogue. I don't throw it away, but I make something. I might make another loaf of bread. But what I do notice is that the sourdough is much more bubbly and fresh if you get rid of some of it by using it. If you just keep adding and adding and adding, at some point it's not going to look as bubbly. I've had this starter going for over a year.
Oh.
Now, sometimes, like if we go away, I will cook up, like I make the discard recipes, like the bread, the cranberry bread and the waffles, and I freeze them so that the waffles would make great toaster waffles. So when we go away, I'll make up a huge batch of stuff. So that's where mine lives, right there.
Okay, right on the counter.
Right on the counter. And then I use up all the starter. And then when I come home, I start all over. And if you use the same container all the time, if say you want to go away and you want to put it to bed and use it all up, I just rinse that with really, really hot water, and then I put it on, just let it sit. there's like little bits of the good bacteria in the ceramic. So when you start it up again, it will come back, you know, the new stuff will come back in pretty quick. All right, now here's the other thing about sourdough bread. It's not like gluten bread in that it's not, you'll see, we're gonna get a loaf and you're gonna be able to work it, but it's stickier. And one of the things that makes life immensely easier is a dough hook and a mixer. Because you can put everything in there and turn it on, and it gets it to where you can then work it a little bit before you put it in the rising basket. Now, you probably can do it without, but I really like it. This is arrowroot. I use arrowroot as the starch because I don't do potatoes or tapioca. I have an allergy. So I use arrowroot. So the idea is, she mentions no more than 50 grams of the starch, which makes it a little lighter. It lightens up the loaf. If you use all whole grain flour, I like heavy bread, but it'll be heavier. All right, so we're gonna do 50. Whoops. All right, 52. And then we're gonna do 80 of these 3 flours and a little more of one.
80 of each one, so you're doing 3 flours?
Yeah, I'm gonna do 3 flours
Okay.
plus the arrowroot. So we're gonna do 50 plus 80 is
130.
130. Okay, so this is the one.
What?
This one's quinoa. Should be 220. Talking and measuring are not my forte.
And then what flour is that one? I
This
missed.
one's millet.
Okay, millet.
220. Okay. And then if I put in 80 of this one here is amaranth. I happen to just, I like these, they call them ancient grain flours.
Mm-hmm.
I like them.
They're called what?
Ancient
Oh,
grain.
ancient grain.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go up to 300 here. All right. A little more. Okay, so then we do 12 grams of sea salt. And you see, I just keep adding in. So now we got to go up to 313. And it works out to about a tablespoon. I've measured it, but I do the weight. And a little extra salt. It's a big loaf. Okay, I'm done with that. All right, so now this is done. And what I do is I take a whisk and I whisk all the flours together before we're gonna put in the wet ingredient. Because you want it, you don't want to leave it all up to the mixer. Is what I'm saying. And I found this prevents things. All right, now there's one. This is the part about what do we do about gluten in a gluten-free bread. So this here is called psyllium husk, whole psyllium husk. You do not want to get psyllium husk powder. There's a difference because psyllium husk powder is ground and it's much more concentrated and heavy, so that when you weigh this out, it's going to be more binding. We need 300 milliliters of water, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this scale does milliliters. Turn it back on, change to grams, and we're going to put 20 grams of this in. This is the psyllium husk. Stir this up. And then we have to let it sit for a minute. Then you're going to see why this is the magic ingredient to gluten-free bread. Stretchy like gluten bread. The psyllium. And I used to see this as an ingredient in, breads you can buy in the store, and I was like, well, what's that? Psyllium. But now I have a real respect for psyllium because it makes the bread perfect every time. So now you got to just let it takes maybe 5 minutes. All right, you see this is getting
Yeah, look at that.
jello-y. All right. Okay. So now we turn the scale back on and we go for 15 grams of olive oil, 20 grams of maple syrup. As I mix this up so that it's all nice and you see how it's quite gelatinous. We take this. Now you see, until everything is ready, I don't start mixing the ingredients because I don't want the flours to sit and absorb water and get, you know, stiff, because you'll have, you know, chunks in your bread. So I wait until we're done with the psyllium mixture. By the way, I bought myself a set of these spatulas, because when I'm cooking, I end up inevitably using 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Put this guy in there like that. Put that there. Let's see, I'm used to being on the other side of it. I think I can do it. All right. I go low first. If you go high, you know where the flour's gonna go?
Yeah.
And I have one of those thingies, but it's just, if you start it out slow.
Yeah, pretty quick. That was quick.
It goes pretty quick. In here. Okay. All right, now you see it's not really doughed up, as I would call it. But this is just a matter of, so sometimes I take it and I scrape it.
Get the edges back in play.
Yeah, and also you see the psyllium and the flours and everything, after they sit for a minute, it will change. You know, so, and contrary to, I'm challenged because it's the raw. You know, with gluten bread, you can work it a lot. And it makes it more cohesive. But with gluten bread, I mean gluten-free bread, you don't want to overwork it. Alright, so the way I do this is I just dust the thing and then I dust it out onto the counter. You want to do that for me? Thanks. Alright. Okay, come on. Thank you. And if you do it right, you see, suddenly we have a loaf.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't over touch, like you can't do these kind of things with it because it will just be sticky. And you can dust your hands with a little extra flour, but I've kind of gotten it down where I just need that little bit. And I try just to get it, you know, I throw it down to get some of the air out and any of the, you know, places that might open as a crack. And you can just work it a little. And then, again, I'm just looking to make sure that we don't, see, like that could turn into a big crack in the bread. So we don't, you know, we want to, this is going to now rise until tonight, and then I'll bake it.
Are you going to do that again? Pat it?
Nope.
that's
So
it.
unlike gluten bread, this is it. So you remember when we started, I took that loaf out of here and put it onto the parchment paper. So that loaf started out like this last night.
So this is what we started with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it does, now I used to put it in the oven with the light on. Oven off, light on. It gives you almost, and I put a thermometer in there, it gives you almost 75 degrees, which is a great rising temperature. However, what I discovered is you don't want this to rise up to the size of the finished loaf before you bake it, because then there's nowhere for it to rise, and it actually falls a little bit, so that you get, at the bottom of the loaf, it's more compact, and the middle is more full. So you can just let it sit on the, I usually let it sit like right over here. Just, kind of, this is maybe a warmer corner, because it's not near the windows. But you can experiment. It depends on how warm your house is. Just wet it down with hot water, and so that will sit until tonight. All right, now this is where you're going to lift it this way, okay? Because you're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
See that steam?
Beautiful.
See that loaf? Yummy. So you see how it's a little bit light colored. So we're going to pop it back in for 8 minutes, and it crisps up the bread. Now, here's the other really disappointing thing about gluten-free bread. You cannot cut gluten-free bread the minute it comes out of the oven, or it will be ruined.
The
Okay?
whole loaf.
The whole loaf will be gummy inside. You have to put it on a rack and let it cool completely. That takes 3 to 4 hours. And that means that you'll actually have it be like a crumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's finishing cooking. That heat is really part of it. So you can't take that knife and cut it and put the butter on it and eat it warm. I use because it's really hot. This pan is like, I've burnt myself. So I need thick mitts. Okay, so here we go. That is done. And you see it got a little darker. It sounds hollow. Can you hear that? So that tells you that it's done. So now you just have to wait. That loaf has to sit there for 3 hours.
3 hours.
A gluten-free sourdough loaf, a cranberry walnut bread with the starter, and the waffles, sourdough waffles.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming.